Hello and welcome to the much awaited interview of the man himself, Mr. Nikhil Arora, the MD and the VP, the Managing Director and the Vice President of GoDaddy since 2017, and also a compassionate nature by heart. This man loves and contributes his life to many charity and many social causes. I am pleased to be having this interview with him on the World Mental Health Day, October 10, 2019. So let's hear it from Mr. Nikhil Arora. Firstly, thank you, Mr. Nikhil, for sparing some time for giving this beautiful interview, and I'm highly honored to be having this interview with you.
Thank you for talking to me and having me on your show.
So tell us, Mr. Nikhil, as we all already know that people, they just see successful people's just the top layer of success, but many fail to see beneath that level, beneath that surface. They fail to see the successful people's personal and professional challenges and sacrifices. Has there been any experience in your life which you would love to share with us, which changed the way you now look at things, or perhaps which changed the complete perspective of your life? And what did that experience teach you?
Yeah. Very interesting question. Thanks for asking. So I think, growing up early in childhood, like many in middle class families, and for me, I think two things impacted me a lot. Right, one was the dedication of my father. Like, I think many of people can relate to it. People who had come after the partition to India, their parents, their grandfathers really had nothing left, right? So everybody started from scratch, and the tenacity and just the discipline of making it through every day, right, and saving it for every day was something which at that time I didn't learn, because I felt like, why is my dad so stingy and why doesn't he want to spend? Later on in my life, I reflect back and say, oh my God, that is what got us to good schools, and that is what got us through where we are today, right? So that looking back really is a big reflection to understand what my dad was doing, why he was doing, right? And secondly, having seen my mom not well from very early childhood days, right, that really grounded me for all the strength and the values I have today in every aspect of my life, right? Because that teaches you humility, that teaches you patience, that teaches you nothing to take for granted. That teaches you never to really start thinking too much about yourself, because things can change overnight. You can have all the money, you can have all the wealth, if there is no health, everything changes. So for me, having that, having seen that part of not being that well, for my mom, it really gave me all the strength, because every time I get into any position, I say, hey, she has the strength and she's been able to push through it. What I'm facing with is nothing, right? So I think that gives you that mental strength, the stability, the patience, and also helps you really absorb the situation and say, hey, this is what you have now, let's how to make the best out of it. And how do you be positive about it, right? How do you give out positive energy? Because one of the values both from childhood and over the years is like, you keep giving out positive things, you keep doing good for people, and goodness will come back to you. And if it doesn't, it's okay, because you have to be yourself, you have to do what will make you a better person. And I think that's the fundamental value I always try to follow, to say, you keep spreading the goodness, and some goodness will always come back to you, and that's a blessing. Thank you.
GoDaddy is the spine of many businesses, and many business websites thrive on because of GoDaddy. Now, because everybody's businesses has their highs and lows and ups and downs, and it is not easy to maintain that sanity at all given points of time at all times. What advice would you give from your own experience, from your own rich experience of life, to these people who are going through that patchy surface? Because it's very easy, to just sit back and sulk, but it takes a lot of courage to actually go down there and do whatever it takes. So what would be your advice to such people at such overwhelming times?
A great question. In all businesses, we all will go through different highs and lows, right? That's just the nature of the business. My own learnings and learnings which I've got from others is that when you're going through a high, that's when you have a roof on your head, and when it's raining and you have roof on the head, that's the best time to prepare for the lows, which means you actually have a good support system. So first of all, make people count. Have that team which is your source of energy, both energy you give and energy you get back, right? So making sure every team member of you is counted, both not only from a business point of view, both from emotional and a psychological support is very important. Second is about making sure you invest a lot in your own physical fitness, because just physical fitness and sports in general is a great muscle you can develop, both to tackle mental illnesses and also to build that tenacity when times are tough. Because what happens in sports, right? There are times you will win and there are times in which you lose, and it teaches you what to do when you lose, because it's not like you have lost. On that day your performance wasn't that great, or somebody's performance was better than that. So you depersonalize it and just take it in that way to say, maybe I need to train more, maybe I have to understand what my competition is, maybe I want to kind of put in more and more hours, or maybe it's a different kind of training. Maybe you trained enough but you just trained, you had the wrong program. So investing in your physical fitness is a tool you will use in your life, both to tackle illnesses and businesses. The third is about breaking it down into small moments of success, right? Meaning for every loss you may have some wins, right? So when the times are low, go reflect back on the wins, because you need that positivity, right? You need that positivity of what winning looked like, right? And when you go and reflect on that, it infuses positive energy, and makes you think more positively, more powerfully, more passionately, right? So that's what the third thing I would highly recommend, right? So all the way from making people count in your team, leaning on them and leaning for them. Second is investing in really your physical fitness, so that way you are able to build that muscle and be able to basically deal with losses. And then lastly, just reflecting on wins and making sure you're keeping a record of your wins, because very soon you kind of start losing track of that. And lastly, the overwhelming thing in business is always go to the lowest denominator, and your lowest denominator and the most important denominator is your customers. So anytime you have created a product, make sure you go talk to those customers to say, is that product solving the problem the customer has, or is that the product trying to solve some thing you think which will solve for them, but it's not, right? And in times of low, if you go back to that denominator and go and talk to a few customers, you will get the biggest source of truth, and that will help you just either pivot or persevere in your path.
So Mr. Nikhil, what's your take on the mental health sector in India?
Today is the World Mental Health Day, which is October 10th. Which is a day which got started, at least the awareness of this whole concept got instituted back in 1992. And the objective of the World Mental Health Day was to drive awareness about what mental health and what mental illnesses is all about. If you just step back and think about what are the kind of different illnesses which affect people or causes which affect people, right? It ranges all the way from depression to anxiety to schizophrenia to dementia to Alzheimer's to post-stress disorder and so on. Worldwide, the World Health Organization estimates people suffering from some sort of a mental illness, ranging from 300 million to a billion people, depending on what the definition is. If you look at different countries, India specifically, the range is between 7 to 10% of the population at some point is suffering, which is almost 1 in 10 people. If you look at countries like China, the World Health Organization reported that 91% of people who actually suffer from some sort of a mental health issue don't even seek help. And in United States, 1 in 5 adults at some point, will suffer from some sort of, a mental illness. So statistics are pretty revealing and very, I would say, troubling in that sense that while when we talk about physical illnesses, they get addressed. But when you talk about mental illnesses, I think there are many factors, right? There are the factors of the social stigma. There's the factors of, how to seek help. And always there are 2 parts of this equation. One is the person who suffers, and the other is, the people who give or try to give care to that person. And I want to talk about both the sides here. Firstly, when the person suffers, there's already a challenge and an anxiety going on within that person. And the best we can do is actually to be there, to just listen, to reflect, to absorb, and try to not actually solve it, because a lot of times we are not the experts and able to solve it, and also not brush it off or laugh it off, because a lot of times our tendency is to say, let's go on a vacation, or let's do something fun and it'll be over, right? In many cases, it is actually a medical issue, not just a momentary issue. So we actually, as people, have to step back and be there, reflect, understand, and really try to seek help from them and make them understand that we are in their journey. The second part is, from a caregiver perspective, I personally have been in this situation, giving care, to my parents. And, what I've learned, especially in India, is that, it equally affects the caregiver, because especially when you think about support groups. In India, there are not many support groups where I'm trying to learn from somebody's experiences of giving care. Secondly, I think the whole medical health system here, I don't think the training of professional is really that deep for mental illnesses. And just sharing an example, right? When you go into any hospital and you walk in, a lot of hospitals are actually not trained to handle patients, whether they have dementia or Alzheimer's or anxiety or schizophrenia. So you're being treated as if you have some physical illness. So when I talk about when you go to the medical counter to get the billing done, there is no provision that if the person is suffering from something where they're not like being able to talk or able to talk rationally, there should be a provision for them be able to get ahead of the process and be addressed, right? Or for example, sometimes you take them for medical tests and the same question are being asked to them as being asked to somebody who's not suffering from some mental illness. That doesn't make sense, because the reason somebody brings them there is because they are going through something, but they're not perhaps in their best mental ability to be able to answer that. So my learning has been that why don't we have better training? Why don't we have a better social support groups so others can learn from experiences? Why don't we have better training of personnel? Why don't we have better institutions or certain segments within these hospitals which are addressing those needs? So overall, I think this is a very this area of illnesses which impact everybody in some point of their life, and having the ability to be able to treat them at the right time really matters, and also for us as caregivers to be able to understand when to give and what kind of care to give, because my learning in the beginning was I was trying to solve for it, and I realized I can't. What I can do is to make sure to get them to the right care, be able to be patient, be reflective, be not dismissive, because that's a common pattern to say it can't be that, and so on.